Okay, and we're live, you guys. Hi, everybody. It is Michelle, Lone Star Left. We are back again with some more candidates. I am so excited. And we will do some introductions. Early voting has already started, you guys. If you haven't voted yet, make sure you go vote. Primary is a big deal, and it is a big deal because we have a lot of fantastic candidates here in Texas. So let's just get into it. I am going to start with Angel, who is running for House District 52, and that is in Williamson County. So go ahead, Angel. Take a couple minutes and introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. Hi, my name is Angel Carroll. I'm running for House District 52 in Williamson County, which is just outside of Austin. Running in this district truly has been an honor for me. I grew up in this district, but I was also harmed in this district. My day job includes training advocates and stakeholders on multiple levels on how to disrupt the school to prison pipeline. And so that's quite literally where my story began at being first arrested and detained at 10 and 11 years old here in the county, and later being put in a youth prison. I had never been convicted of a crime, but there were no foster homes for me. So it was while studying social work at Texas Tech that I got into the outcomes for foster care youth and started showing up to the state capitol. My work has taken me to the Texas Supreme Court, where I helped get the Texas Judicial Commission on Mental Health their commission established, and have served on their collaborative council for the last 5 years. At one point, I was the youngest governor appointee to the Texas Juvenile Justice Advisory Board. And after spending the last 5 sessions working on local and statewide policies around not just public education and criminal justice, but civil rights and access to mental health services, I walked away extremely frustrated with how not just our state, but our district is being represented, and decided to throw my hat in the ring. I believe we need more working class Texans who are going to fight for the communities that they live and work in, and listen to their constituents and make sure that they're being put first and not special interest.
Okay, perfect. I love it. And let's go to Bill next. Bill is running for the Railroad Commission, and don't let the name fool you because it's all oil and gas. Maybe Bill can tell us a little bit more about that. Bill, go ahead.
Yep, yeah, exactly as you said. It is the agency that controls our oil and gas industry. But it also, interestingly enough, is also one of the most powerful agencies in Texas because it controls things such as even buying a bottle of propane at your local hardware store, to the 811 system, the call before you dig system. And it also controls uranium mining in the state of Texas, which a lot of people don't know that we had and we still have a little bit of, and also lignite and coal mining operations. Again, both our mining operations are pretty much in their sunset phase, but this is the agency that really controls all of the natural energy production and distribution to market in the state of Texas. It is an agency that controls literally 8% of our total GDP of the state, 2.2 plus million jobs, and $26 billion worth of royalties to the PSF and PUF funds and the rainy day funds for the state of Texas. This agency is also the most corrupt. It's the worst run agency in the state of Texas by a good country mile. This is the agency that has actually supreme remit over the environment in the state of Texas. The memorandum of understanding between the EPA and the Texas Railroad Commission basically gave all authority in the state of Texas to the Texas Railroad Commission. And even though TCEQ, you would think, is our department that really manages the environmental quality, or as the name says, the reality is that the agency is also greatly underfunded by our Republicans in the Texas House and Senate, which has made it a toothless gummy worm of an agency to enforce anything. And Texas Railroad Commission follows suit. We have less than 186 inspectors to manage 1.2 plus million oil wells, another 300 or 400,000. We don't have a clue where they are. 330,000 miles of pipeline, and 400 plus drilling rigs, and literally 253 of 254 counties. That allows the industry to self-regulate. And as I tell everybody in the campaign trail, go jump on your local highway, do 150 miles an hour, call your sheriff and turn yourself in for speeding, and let me know when it happens. So the reality of where we're at is that this is the agency that is literally going to decide whether the state of Texas is a livable environment for up to the next century. And when I say that, I'm not exaggerating, because we have right now in Crane County, Ward County, Pecos County, and Reeves County, a 500,000 acre groundwater contamination underground blowout occurring, and earthquakes in West Texas, as well as in San Antonio region, that happened last Saturday at a 4.7 magnitude, that is literally turning the state into a toxic Superfund site. So when people say, "Well, it's a railroad commission," I don't care. You know, what do they do? They didn't fix my gate crossing at my FM farm to market road. I say, yeah, folks, like this is the race that is literally the most important race. There's a reason why it's an executive level position. And in this electoral cycle, it's number 4 across everybody's ballot in the state of Texas. And this race really is the one that's going to decide whether we can live in the state and have actually a healthy, clean environment to live in or not.
Okay. And I absolutely agree. This is a very, very important race. And we do have one more candidate. She just logged on. I just saw her. Amanda is running for Congressional District 18. Is it 18? Okay.
That's right.
I don't, okay. And she's running against Sheila Jackson Lee. So as you can imagine, she's got a big primary. Again, vote. But Amanda, why don't you take a couple minutes and go ahead and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. And first, thank you for having me, Michelle. My name is Amanda Edwards. I'm one of the former at-large Houston City Council members, but I'm now running to serve as the next Congresswoman for the 18th Congressional District. And the reason that is so is because our community is at a crossroads. And I think we have one of two choices that we can make. We can either stay in place, or we can choose to move forward in a way that's bold, that's innovative, and creates a community where every single person in it, no matter what their background, no matter where they're from, has the opportunity not just to get by in the community. We want them to thrive in our community. And that means we're going to have to bring a fresh perspective, a new approach, new solutions to the table to tackle some of the lingering challenges that we face in our community. And at the same time, do something I call walking and chewing gum, which is dealing with the challenges, but then also seizing the opportunities that we otherwise could miss. And in this case, those opportunities involve creating access to opportunities for our small businesses, economic opportunity, education access, ways that we can help to support healthcare needs, as we still live in a community where we have not just a high number of uninsured Americans. We live in a community that we have also underinsured Americans. And in Texas, those numbers are very high, and it's time for us to address that and tackle that issue as well again. I'm very excited. We have gotten in the race early. I guess June of 23 is considered early. And I got in that at that time, and we've just gotten so much support across a very broad spectrum because people are feeling shut out by what's happened in Washington, and they're not seeing the torch being passed, if you will, so that new ideas and new solutions can truly manifest. And that's what this is about. It's not about me or my opponent. It's really about the community deciding that it's time for them to get the change that they want to see. And that's what this campaign is about. And we just closed out last quarter out fundraising our incumbent opponent by more than 10-1. So it has been a very strong testament to the fact that people are investing in the future of their community. So we're very excited.
Okay, great.
And I voted yesterday.
Yeah. And you guys, I went to the polls this morning. I was in and out in 5 minutes. If you haven't voted yet, I'm going to say this like 20 times today. I'm going to say it every day, but vote, please vote. So let's start with Angel. So why don't we begin with the border, because this is an ongoing conversation that we are having with Republicans. We're having it with our, family. We're having it with our neighbors. But with you're running for the Texas House. In the Texas House, we have allocated like $13 billion for Greg Abbott's border stunts and Operation Lone Star. So what are your thoughts on that? And if you're elected, what do you think that we should do going forward to rein in Greg Abbott? And also, I don't know, you tell me what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so I think it's, really important to say, and you touched on this, Operation Lone Star is a failed mission. Like it's there's no data that has shown that it's been successful. And so I think we need to end it first off. I also think that the state needs to start funding state programs and the federal government needs to do what they need to do to hold them, they need to be held accountable, right? We're spending money that the Texas government should not be doing. I have a strong criminal justice background, and what we're seeing on the border is just furthering this mass incarceration that we're seeing, specifically Latinas and Latinx folks, which is deeply concerning, right? These are challenges that I think is imperative that our federal government needs to enhance their approach to addressing this humanitarian crisis. When elected, I look forward to working again to fund some of our state programs. The fact that we have elderly folks that are waiting oftentimes years to get appointments because that funding has been taken away from programs, and we have officers in our detention facilities who don't have the safety equipment that they need. Our ACs in our prisons, and folks are dying of heat exhaustion because we've taken funding out of those programs, and foster care kids don't have placements, again, because their funding is being taken away to fund Operation Lone Star. That's unacceptable, and something that I really want to speak to. In this last year, we saw the GOP push dangerous anti-immigrant agendas that we haven't seen in years. And so I really want to speak truth to power and to hold these systems accountable, and saying no more, and making sure that communities of color feel safe in their communities. There's no reason why folks should be scared of giving their neighbors and children rides because they can be discriminated against, which we already know people of color are discriminated against while driving. And so continuing that work. I've been showing up to the state capitol for the last 10 years talking about civil rights and the intersection between the criminal justice system. And so continuing that.
Okay, good answer. And so sticking with the border, let's go to Amanda. Like Angel said, the border situation, immigration is a federal responsibility. And I don't think there's anybody that would disagree that our immigration system is broken. So what do you think that Congress has to do? And if you're elected, what would you do?
I mean, what we have seen is decades of making promises that we would put comprehensive immigration reform front and center, but an inability to get that done. And what it's resulting in is it's led to humanitarian crises at our border. It's also led to just the it's so politicized right now that we're not in a space where I think people are really being serious about true reform. And if you really think about what immigration reform is needed, I mean, you've got to address not just how to humanely protect your border, but also what's causing the conditions in the first place for people to be trying to enter this country in the ways that they are. There are some real deep systemic issues that we need to address. When we look at the criteria for entry into the country, the waiting list, I mean, quite a few variables are out of date and need to be modernized. And we just haven't done that in decades because we continue to fixate on things like just the border, as opposed to looking at this holistically as the issue that it is, which is a series of policies that have not been updated, modernized, and of course, sized correctly to meet the needs of where we stand in a modern society today. And that's where we need to be heading. We've got people who live in this country currently who are undocumented. We need to talk about that in a constructive fashion in terms of pathways towards citizenship. I mean, these are things that right now they're just wedge issues and they're red meat to your base, and we've not packaged this up in a way that has led toward a more constructive outcome for our neighbors, our community, and for the people in our world. We've got to be good global citizens. And right now, the way we're handling immigration is not consistent with our democratic values.
Yeah. And so do you think that, because we're seeing mass migration right now, from a lot of South American countries, Central American countries, do you think that there are American policies that are contributing to that migration?
And that's what we need to have a serious deep dive on, right? Is what are those elements, those policies, those practices that we're engaging in right now that could be worsening the circumstances for our neighbors that are now seeking to come in. You're not going to have, just, a silver bullet here, but you certainly need to, that's what comprehensive immigration reform is about. It's about seeing it as a holistic set of policies that we need to put into place that can help to complement each other, including some of our international policies that may have some bearing on the pressure that we now see at the border, et cetera, and the wait lines that people are experiencing when they're trying to enter this country and find out that it's going to be a decade or two before they may have that opportunity. And so it's challenging. And yes, I think that we've got to explore. That's when I talk about comprehensive immigration reform, that's also part of that package, and do a real deep dive on those issues today, not what they look like in 2015 and not what they look like in 2000, but what do they look like in 2024, and really have a real fresh take on this issue and providing some new solutions. I think that is urgent that we focus on it and actually deliver this time.
Okay. Gonna switch gears a little bit. I'm gonna go to Bill, because you said something that like kind of triggered, it might be like an irrational fear with me, but it's definitely a fear. From all of this fracking, I'm constantly worried about, Texas is going to just sink into this big hole and, the ground's going to suck us all up. And, but is there real danger, besides the earthquakes? Are they going to cause sinkholes, or are the earthquakes the biggest danger? Tell me what the cause of this is, and, why do we need to be concerned?
Well, it really is a real risk. And the industry has unfortunately ignored it, the severity of it, for quite some time now. There is a road in West Texas when you go from Monahans to Fort Stockton called FM 1053. The TxDOT has been fighting and spent $22 million of our money to try to continually build up the road base, because it's a 50-acre area that is currently sinking. And in West Texas, as flat as a door, you literally have this area over a course of 1,000 feet that drops 90 feet. It's like a roller coaster. And it's now just a matter before it actually collapses and turns completely inside out. We have numerous sinkholes in West Texas. The Wink Sinks are the most famous ones. There's 2 open holes in the ground that are contaminated with produced water and into our groundwater. Those are actually been ongoing for quite some time. They've been studied by the University of Texas and SMU for quite some duration and satellite imagery. We also have one in Dicetta in East Texas, so I can't even say it's just West Texas based. The Dicetta ones are now 3 locations that have opened up in Liberty County, and it is across the board. The real issue is the underlying cancer. And the cancer is really a combination of 2 things. One, it's the produced water. So for every barrel of oil we produce out of the unconventional resources, these shale oil and gas wells that we drill, we get 5 to 6 barrels of this toxic radioactive isotope produced water that the industry chooses not to recycle because it costs a little bit more money. So what we do is we end up injecting this at the lowest possible rates back into the earth. Well, the problem is, historically, whenever we injected this water, we always put it back into the same zones we produced out of it. But these wells that have to be hydraulically stimulated, or fracked, as we call it, unfortunately, is like pumping it into concrete. So you cannot dispose of this water back into the same zone it's produced from. We have filled up every single disposal zone that we have literally in West Texas, and now we've overpressurized them, which is causing these earthquakes. Now, if the earthquakes and the sinkholes were the only problems, that wouldn't be that bad. But the problem is that all of these old oil and gas wells that we drilled, all our old legacy wells that weren't plugged worth a damn to start with, because the Railroad Commission said, oh, well, Bob's a good guy. I don't have to worry about being on his location to actually plug it. And nobody was actually there to witness the jobs and verify the jobs that were done for long-term isolation. The reality is that we have thousands and thousands and thousands of conduits that are allowing the pressure to now escape from the disposal zone into our groundwater. And people have just started to get a grasp of, like, the Houston Chronicle article and a few others that came out in December about the ghost well that broached to surface under its own horsepower from 600 feet to surface through the groundwater, and is contaminated an area of over 500,000+ acres. And I try to tell folks in Houston that the city of Houston is 426,000 acres. This problem is already bigger than the city of Houston. And this is the future of Texas. This is the status of our groundwater And remember, these are ranchers, these are farmers, these are folks that use this water from the groundwater to be able to feed their cattle, to be able to grow and keep their farms functioning. And the reality is that what we are doing in the oil and gas industry is basically making the agricultural industry in the state of Texas a non-viable commodity. What exacerbates this problem even worse is the fact that we're taking the water from New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Louisiana without any federal permits in place. The state of Texas is allowing these lines to be laid and be able to have the toxic produced radioactive isotope water come across the border from 3 other states and dump in the state of Texas, because we are literally the dumping grounds for everybody else's problems. And again, this is something that the Texas Railroad Commission over the last 50 years, being under Republican control, has managed to remove every single environmental stewardship for the oil and gas operation. And it is now leaving us a legacy of, we have to make a choice. Are we going to save the state and have it actually be a livable state, or are we going to destroy the environment so badly that it's an unfixable environment as a Superfund site? The Permian is 9 million acres of production capacity. It's got literally 200,000+ holes drilled into it that we are going to have to monitor, maintain, and manage for the next 10,000+ years. And I try to say to folks, in the nuclear fuel rod problem, storage issues, that 10,000 year problem. Well, every 1,600 years, the problem drops in half because the isotopes hit their half-life, and then the radiation emission drops in half and half and half again. So by 10,000 years from now, we got a whole bunch of lead concrete in boxes full of concrete that we're all going to say, why did you have all this concrete, right? The reality in the oil and gas industry is that our problems double every century. 50% of our wells more than 25 years old are already in a current state of failures. And if the wells are over 50 years old, the vast majority of studies that have been conducted, 80% of the wells are already failed or flowing or have major contamination or cross-flow patterns. So the industry is setting themselves up for a toxic legacy, and unfortunately an expense to the taxpayer, because the privatized profit sharing to the socialized cleanup is going to be passed to every single taxpayer. Now, whether it's contained in the state of Texas to pay for the long-term legacy, or whether we're tasking the federal government to help share the cost across all 50 states to pay for the legacy. And the problem with that is that it's not just isolated in Texas. Texas has the vast majority of wells in the Gulf Coast region, but the federal government has got thousands and thousands of wells in the Gulf Coast and off the Atlantic. And we've got wells all over Louisiana and Mississippi and Oklahoma and New Mexico and California and New York and Ohio. We have wells all across this country that are going to end up in this exact same circumstance. So the size and scale of problem in Texas is we have to address our problem in Texas first and foremost. The question is going to be, do we actually elect a Democrat to actually start to address the environmental issues that are happening in the state? Or do we kick the can down the road and wait to see when it actually truly breaks free to surface?
Well, I thought you were going to say something to make me feel better. But
well,
you didn't.
The thing I can say to honestly make people feel better is that there is an opportunity here of a lifetime. The industry has ignored the opportunity to recycle this water. And if there's one thing you know about West Texas, and if you ever spend any time in West Texas, is that, let's say, access to fresh water is a pretty rare, limited commodity. It's not exactly in plentiful supply. The industry's ability to able to actually put some energy into the recycling, the technology exists. They just choose not to do it because it's too expensive. And they want incentivization to be able to do these programs. But the reality is that changing the paradigm of access to fresh water in West Texas, whether it goes to El Paso, whether it goes to Austin, San Antonio, whether it goes to our agricultural footprint, is a viable technology. And again, we manage in the state of Texas, in West Texas alone, we manage what the city of Houston's entire municipal water supply uses in a year. We manage in a day in West Texas. The size and scale of the problem that we are talking about would change the future of Texas forever by giving us access to fresh water beyond scale and usable commodity to expand our cities and to be able to manage our public infrastructure and grow more agricultural supply. So the reality of the future of what we could do is really a big positive outcome. But again, we've got to have leadership in the Texas Railroad Commission who actually addresses the reality of actually recycling it and not just continue to do what we've always done in the industry.
Right. So you guys heard it. If you want to live in a dystopian apocalypse, vote Republican. If you want to live in a clean and nice state, vote for the Democrat, which is Bill. And I have endorsed Bill this session. That is on my website from earlier this week. So let's switch over because we got to talk about some other stuff. And I will start with Amanda because you did bring up healthcare. And right now in the state of Texas, there are 6 million people that are without health insurance. An average of about 1,000 people a year die every single year in Texas because they don't have access to health care. You know, what do we do from that? From the federal level, what do we do?
Well, this issue is very personal to me because when I was growing up, my dad got diagnosed with something called multiple myeloma, which is a very aggressive form of cancer. And I was 10 years old when he got his diagnosis, and I was 17 years old when he died. But it was during his journey that I learned quite a bit about what our U.S. healthcare system was or wasn't, by way of me asking my father lots of questions like this insurance stuff that I had been learning about by way of hearing their conversations. And I remember asking my dad, well, what happens if this insurance stuff says no to some of his life-saving treatments? And my dad would just answer me and say, well, we just have to figure something else out. And I knew that that wasn't the right answer. And that the right answer should have been that we actually had systems that worked for people and their families and their community because their lives are lying in a balance. And that's been really just kind of the underpinning of my motivation to serve, is to get it right for people whose lives are lying in a balance. And so you are hitting the nail on the head on the fact that we have a huge problem in the state of Texas. We have millions of people who are uninsured, and we have millions of people who are underinsured. And we cannot people cannot afford to wait 5, 6, 7 years as we debate, or we let something cool down. Because right now, what we have is the Affordable Care Act, which, if you can recall, upon its initial passage, was never intended just to remain as it was, right? They always said, we're going to expand, we're going to improve, we're going to do all of the things. But if you recall also, that's when the lawsuits started flying around. And so nobody really wanted to touch healthcare anymore. But in the meantime, you've got millions of people who need us to touch healthcare, and we need it to be fixed. There are lots of people right now, when I say underinsurance, they pay a premium, they think they have the coverage they need until they find out that they don't. Until something catastrophic happens, they realize, oh, you mean so-and-so hospital won't take my insurance? Oh, and that's a problem for a lot of people in our country, people who are trying to become entrepreneurs. So it's not just this is all ages that are impacted by this. These are young entrepreneurs who, do you want to have the Affordable Care Act, which may or may not be covered or taken at the healthcare providers of your choice or choosing? Is it going to have enough coverage? I mean, these are things that we have to address through policy solutions. And that's something that really distinguishes me from my opponent, is that I'm really interested in really utilizing all the tools in the toolkit in terms of systems change. And in this case, we got a system that's not working well at all, and we've got to get to it. I mean, there are lives that will be lost by our inability to act. So that would be a high priority. As it relates to healthcare access, I think we have to look at it from a variety of lenses. Obviously, fixing and expanding the Affordable Care Act in the immediate, so that those that have it actually can be helped by it, but also looking at women's health. That's a huge problem for us living in the state of Texas. Texas is the most dangerous place to live if you get pregnant, because should something happen to you or happen to you or your health during that pregnancy, you cannot terminate that pregnancy here in Texas legally, which is dangerous, right? And it's just a very dangerous situation to be in. And we're in the most dangerous state that there is as it relates to women's health. I would also say, as we're talking about women's health and women's reproductive rights, we also need to talk about what's happening with our seniors. Medicare has gone up in cost,
Yeah.
and Social Security, the fixed income. I'm talking about seniors who are living on $20,000 a year. And who are rationing their prescription drugs, trying to decide, well, maybe I just take one pill instead of two today because I can't afford that prescription this month. Or trying to make a decision about what food or which meals to skip because they have this prescription cost. And while there has been some reprieve allowed for with regard to the Inflation Reduction Act, it's not nearly enough of what's needed. I just had a conversation yesterday at the polls with a woman who shared with me the story that her husband was enduring in terms of prescription drug costs, who is not a senior, but who has cancer and has some real healthcare bills to deal with. And the fact that we are sticking individuals with these kinds of costs and exorbitant fees it's unconscionable. It's really unconscionable. And we continue on because that's what's always been, which is why it's time to make new choices at the ballot booth. We cannot be comfortable with this level of dysfunction. We just can't. It's too dysfunctional. There's too much at stake and too many consequences from it. So I'm very in tune with the challenges that our residents are facing. And I think on a federal level, you've got to look at it from a comprehensive lens, both from a women's reproductive health, healthcare access, but also with respect to how we're treating our most vulnerable residents, which happen to be our seniors.
Okay. And that's great answer. And so in Texas, and I'm going to move over to Angel now. We have not expanded Medicaid. That's 5 or 6 states in the whole nation that have not expanded Medicaid. Texas is one of them. Should we do that? And what else do you think needs to be done to make sure that Texans are covered, if they need it?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Absolutely, we need to expand Medicaid, expand Medicaid, expand Medicaid. As it was mentioned, I'm one of those many Texans, thousands of Texans, right, who have to make real decisions of, I have high premiums, so do I pay my premium after that? Do I pay for medication or do I pay for food? Because the cost of food is going up, let alone how inaccessible healthy food options are, right? Like these are the struggles that everyday Texans are having to face. Additionally, here in Williamson County, we're seeing a wide range of health-related issues and challenges. One of the most significant challenges that we're seeing is the lack of access to care, particularly for low-income residents who don't have health insurance, or again, rely on Medicaid, didn't realize that they were kicked off of it within the last couple years. And, this scarcity often is delayed or, they get inadequate treatment. God forbid you have an existing health condition, right? And your chances of getting, proper care decreases. And then again, the healthcare costs. So these are all things that I really want to address. And that also it's important to focus in on the fact that COVID happened, right? Counties are running out of that money, and it's putting on a huge strain on our rural healthcare providers. So I really believe in investing in community care facilities and then also working to empower our rural healthcare providers as well, because they are seeing, they're really struggling right now, not only to provide care, but to also get healthcare workers to come out into these communities and to provide services. And so I really want to be an advocate at the state capitol and working with our community-based organizations saying, what do you need and how can we most help you? And then going on to reproductive rights. I am a staunch believer in that the government should not have a say in what a woman does with her body. That decision should be between her doctor, and whomever else she decides to have involved in that conversation. So, I really want to continue on the legacy that the Honorable Wendy Davis started. I have been saying this for years. They're coming after birth control. We know that abstinence-free programs there's no data that shows that is effective, but yet we continue to funnel money through these programs that quite frankly are creating harm, and we've politicized health. I taught a short session at Prairie View A&M this summer, and the session before me was a health course with some really bright young girls who were in high school, and they didn't know that when a woman is pregnant, that the fetus is in her uterus, not her stomach, because they're not learning this in their class. It's It's unacceptable. When I was studying social work at Texas Tech, his name was Preacher John, and he would go around teaching abstinence. And that was the only form of sex education that these kids got. And some of the high schoolers didn't know how they got pregnant, right? And why we saw such a high rate of STDs. And these are things that I think we need to teach our youth, right? In an age appropriate format and curriculum, but we're just not seeing that. And, I also have to add that oftentimes we like to separate issues and silo them into their own corners, that they're all intertwined. When we fund our public schools, we know that those kids come out to make better health decisions and to be more active and willful participants in our economic society. So we have to really look at this with a holistic lens and seeing how they're all intertwined and how do we support everyone from our youth to our senior citizens who are just trying to survive and thrive in Texas.
Okay, yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. Just some quick statistics for those who are listening. Texas is number 3 in like teen pregnancy rate. Lubbock right now is going through an STD crisis with chlamydia. They are having like the CDC go out to Lubbock because the chlamydia crisis is so bad. And in all of these schools, they're teaching abstinence only education. And we do know from research and from studies that have been done, when the state provides things like sex education and free birth control, we see teen pregnancies go down, and we see sexually transmitted diseases go down. So I agree with you 100% on that. So let's, and I know we've got about 15 minutes left, so let's talk about our primary. I know everybody on this call has a primary, and you guys, I'm so excited that Texas has primary elections this year. And this is fantastic for everybody who's like a political geek like me. I know it's probably a little stressful for you guys. But let's say hypothetically, I'm Susie Q, I'm at the poll, I'm looking, Angel, at you and your opponent. Why should I vote for you over your opponent?
Yeah, look, I think it's great that we have 2 women in this race. I think when you look at our incumbent, we need a candidate that has the legislative experience and relationships with tenured representatives and senators to make sure that we're able to navigate this. And that person with those relationships and experience in the state legislature is myself, and also someone who has the ability to reach across the aisle to really talk to moderates in the general election, to pull them over and say, hey, don't you want a representative that's going to focus on you as a district resident and not the special interest of millionaires in either West Texas or across the country? Okay,
good answer. And so Amanda, same question. I'm Susie Q. I'm at the ballot box. I'm looking at the incumbent who has been there for a very long time. And then I'm looking at your name. Why should I check your name over your incumbent?
It's not just about having a fresh perspective and a new approach and new solutions. It's also about someone who is going to be committed to delivering systems change. And a lot of what we're seeing today is bringing Band-Aids to surgery. We don't need Band-Aids during surgery. We need surgery during surgery. And that's what I think we've got to step away from, is this, not having an ability to deliver the results that people are looking for. When I step foot on those doorsteps, every single time, people say it's time for change, and they talk about what they want to see change. And you are going to, at some point, have to do something different if you're going to expect a different result. And that's what this primary election is about. It's doing something different so that you can get a different result. And it's not to suggest that my opponent does not advocate. Certainly my opponent does do that, but there are systems changes that are needed, that we need somebody who's ready to take the helm and lead the way. The former congressman in the district, Craig Washington, who was in the seat prior to my opponent, was someone who was very respected in the community as well, and has come down and endorsed me, saying it was time to pass the torch forward. And it is. You cannot have a relay race and the first leg run past the second leg, run past the third leg, and run past the fourth leg. Otherwise, it doesn't work. It's not a relay. We've got to keep pushing forward the agenda that's needed. And at this moment, I think that agenda requires fixes to some broken systems, but also a vision for how do we win the future. That's the other piece that people are really feeling frustrated by, is not hearing and not seeing where they fit in the vision for the future of this community.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that a lot of people are ready to move on from the status quo, and in most cases in Texas, and not in District 18, but in most cases in Texas, that is Republicans. So, Bill, why should a person vote for you, and how do they know that you're the best person that's going to go against the status quo and the Republican corruption in the Railroad Commission?
A great question. So first and foremost is that my experience, my technical background, and my operational resume shows the fact that I'm actually a technically qualified individual to run for the Texas Railroad Commission, which is energy is really a nonpartisan issue in the state of Texas, or it should be at least. And the reality is that our current commissioners, none of them have actually worked on our drilling rig. None of them have actually worked in oil and gas. Our last commissioner was elected in 2022, ran on the ballot as being a Grammy Award-winning gospel singer, and we elected him, right? So this is the reality of what we've done in the state of Texas, is that we have allowed for people to run one of the most technically complex and most important agencies that have no actual operational background or experience. And, you know, when it comes to the conversation come November, assuming I get through the primary here in one piece, which I hopefully will, the real challenge is going to be to get people to realize that, you know, Democrats aren't out to destroy the fossil fuel industry. What we are out to do is make sure the fossil fuel industry follows environmental stewardship rules and regulations, which is a big difference. But again, what people hear from the Republican talking point is that everybody is out to destroy the fossil fuel industry. And look, we're decarbonizing our transportation sector quickly. We're certainly decarbonizing our residential and commercial infrastructure for power generation. But the one area we can't decarbonize is the paints, the plastics, the pharmaceuticals, all of the everyday products we use every day. 100 years from now, we're still going to be having black oil going into those refineries to generate greases and lubricants and the chemicals that we use in our everyday life. And again, we're not sending the right message to the voter base. And I believe that in this election cycle, we can truly change that narrative. And at least that's my objective, is to get people to realize that in the state of Texas, this is about environmental stewardship and our requirements to manage the industry correctly, not the destruction of the industry that is often being said from a lot of folks.
Okay, I like it. So if you guys each want to take like a couple minutes, 4 or 5 minutes, just to kind of wrap it up and, say where people can find you online or social media or wherever. Let's start with Amanda.
Well, again, as I mentioned, this campaign and this election, it's not about me. It's not about my opponent. It's really about the community and the community getting the results that it's looking for and deserves. And so when they hear those that are on this ballot talk about what they can deliver, I think it's important for them to reflect as to whether or not that's what they want to see. And if you want to see something different, which is what I'm hearing so many of our residents across the community say and feel, you're going to have to do something different this election cycle. So vote for me, Amanda Edwards, running to be the next Congresswoman for the 18th Congressional District. This will be the first time in 30 years that we have new leadership for the district, and I think it's time. We also can be found online. Of course, our website is www.edwardsforhouston.com. Social media, I can be found on Twitter as AK Edwards TX, and then on Instagram and Facebook. And I also have a TikTok account, Amanda K. Edwards TX. I sometimes forget, guys, because I got that late. But follow us wherever you can. And most importantly, you can come find us in the community. You can sign up online to volunteer on our Mobilize link. And we're doing block walking. It's going great. Phone banking. It's going great. So the community's energized, they're empowered, and they're ready to see some different results.
Okay, perfect. And Angel?
Again, Angel Carroll, running for House District 52 in Williamson County. I'm running in this district because of my connection to the community, and it's deeply personal, but also unique. And I think we need more unique and missing perspectives in the state legislature. I didn't just grow up in this district. I've experienced firsthand the challenges and the harm caused by systems that impact not just district residents across the field, but communities of color. And I'm no stranger to the challenges that a lot of our community members are facing. And rather than turning my back on this district, I came back and have been doing the work in this district for the last 10 years. And again, and running to be a return on the investment for the community that raised me. It truly has been an honor to knock on doors and to meet old teachers and principals and even youth judges, right? It's been a great experience. As we're knocking on doors, we're seeing that folks want something different. They want to return this district back to Democratic leadership and to someone that's going to continue to fight for them. So you can learn more about myself and the campaign and our priorities and what the community is saying about this campaign and how we run it on our website and social media. It's angelfortexas.com and Angel for Texas on all social media platforms. We have a lot of great events coming up. We've got some block walking and phone bakings with Julie Oliver, Wendy Davis, and many other electeds and community members. And it's been really great.
Okay. And also, guys, Williamson County went blue in 2020, expecting it to go blue in 2024, knock on wood, but take my word for it. You can ask me about it later. And so last but not least, Bill, go ahead.
Well, thank you. I have to say the first and foremost exciting thing about this is the only executive race in 2024, and all 254 counties get to vote in the Texas Road Commission, is that I will be the first Democrat elected in 30 years since Mr. Gary Morrow as the Public Lands Commissioner. So the highlight on November 6th is going to be that Texas has finally turned blue with one elected executive seat that has finally occurred after 30 years. I'm an oil and gas industry professional. I've been in the business 23 years in 65 countries. I'm trusted by the industry. I'm one of the people that BP called the morning the Deepwater Horizon blew out, where I spent 140 days working at their office, putting out the worst oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico's history. The folks that know me know the fact that I'm truly committed to the industry in terms of helping it clean up its reputation and its legacy issues that occurred all over the state. We have the real issues that are occurring with groundwater contamination and earthquakes across West Texas and San Antonio. That has certainly got a lot of people's attention now. And it's also about the future. The Railroad Commission is the agency that will be managing eventually the wind and solar and battery installs in the state of Texas. Because again, it's the agency that manages our natural energy resources. And its power and extent of this agency requires somebody with a technical background and an understanding to build out the supply side correctly. So that as we move into, again, 100-degree weather over the summer months and sub 40-degree weather in the winter months, everybody's anxiety about whether the power is going to stay on and even whether you can afford your electricity bill, which again, much to Angel's point, the cost of electricity has skyrocketed in the state of Texas in the last 10 years. And for our communities that are being challenged by their other health costs and other issues, the energy bills are really starting to have an impact of whether they can afford their electricity to live in the state of Texas and energy. So this race really affects every single Texan. This is a Texan race. And this is really about our future as a state together. So I truly look forward to having everybody's support. And you can find more information about me at my website at birch4trrc.com. You can also find me on all the social media platforms. And I kind of agree with Amanda. Sometimes I forget about TikTok as well in my discussion points. But I'm on TikTok. I got lots of videos. And I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And also on LinkedIn as well. LinkedIn conversations have tends to be a lot more technical in nature and a lot more pinpointed on industry conversations, but again, fully accessible anytime, and love to answer questions and teach and help people understand the importance of the Texas Road Commission and energy in the state of Texas. So thank you very much for the opportunity this afternoon to come on and talk.
Okay, great. So you guys, the polls are open. Get to the polls. Vote, 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 vote. Early voting goes through March 1st. Election day is March 5th. It is time for Democrats to show these Republicans out. Get to the polls, vote, and if you don't vote, then that's really sad. But just go to the vote, go to the polls and vote. So we'll see you guys again next week. We'll have some more candidates.